Hello, welcome to the March 9th Environmental Advisory Council Committee meeting. And we'll go through our agenda. We have 9 items. The first one is review and approval of the February 9th meeting minutes. I assume
we can't approve anything yet. We don't have a quorum.
Yeah, we do.
We have 4.
I thought Jean wasn't technically on the committee.
No, she's not, but I am.
And
Oh, sorry.
Kevin.
Apparently remedial math is not my strong suit.
That's all right, Linda, you were close.
I was.
Okay.
So is everybody good with the minutes?
Yeah, I will make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for the February 9th, 2023 environmental meeting, the Environmental Advisory Council meeting.
Second, okay. All in favor? Say aye, raise your hand. Aye. All right, 4-0, they are approved.
No, 3-0. I can't.
Oh, you
I
weren't
wasn't
there.
Okay.
A minute. Oh, well.
So you can count after all, Linda.
Yeah.
He's not for that.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe somebody else will come in during the meeting. We can have another vote. All right, we're gonna move number 5, land use plan reviews, up to number 2, because we have some, the public wants to make comments on the 1101 Big Oak Road development, 6 homes on roughly 6 acres. All right, I don't know how we want to do this. Is somebody at the township building?
Yes, I am. Doug
Okay.
Marshall.
Okay, Doug. Hi, Doug.
Hi. Alan, how are you?
Okay. Do you want me to run down what we have at this point?
That'd be great.
Because it's rapidly changing, actually.
Okay.
We sent out comments on January 29th on the project. Our 2 principal concerns were the arborist report, and at that point, they weren't going to plant any replacement trees. So at the February 13th Planning Commission meeting, they came in and had a landscape plan that had the replacement trees in, but they were almost all were shrubs. And 120 of them were shrubs to be planted around the foundations of the 6 buildings. And that's definitely not what we had in mind when we commented on that. Our comment was, let me find it here. Okay, some of the replacement trees, there are 205, can be planted in the 2.8 acres of woodlands that will remain after construction. Given its somewhat degraded condition, the quality of the woodlands could be improved by also planting smaller understory trees and large shade-tolerant shrubs. So our idea was a mix of trees, understory trees, and large shrubs. So they came back in with another plan about a week ago, and it also had almost all shrubs. It had moved most of the shrubs away from the houses. I think there were still 40 around the houses, but still shrubs and understory trees. And then just today, they came back in with another plan that had no shrubs around the houses. I think it had, what was it, 145 shrubs in the woods, 60 understory trees, but no regular trees. So that was it as of last week. And Jim Majewski, are you on, Jim?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, our township engineer sent in a comment that he's going to have him plant some trees to help with the stormwater runoff.
Yeah, Andy, actually, that second email I sent you this afternoon came from Andy. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that. I could show that on my screen, but Andy had the suggestion that in line with your comments, that he showed some locations where he thought more trees rather than shrubs could go. And I'll share my screen right now and you can kind of see where they're talking about. In red, he has sort of outlined additional areas where he feels trees would be beneficial for the project instead of just shrubs.
Okay.
And I haven't heard back from the applicant because Andy just sent that out later this afternoon.
Okay,
But that's something that I think even the condition of approval that was recommended by the Planning Commission talked about working with the engineer and the EAC to make sure that whatever mix of shrubs and trees that were provided kind of makes sense. And I think with Andy's latest markup, I think we're closer to that point.
okay. I don't see any red in the figure. Maybe I'm colorblind.
I think you're a little colorblind.
Is it in
Yeah,
there?
Yeah, there's red.
There's
yeah,
red?
there's some
Okay.
red, but it's.
I am colorblind,
Red.
actually, so, okay, good. So as long as somebody can see it. All right, well, that's good. That was one of our issues, getting them put out in the woods. And the other issue we had was the arborist report. And we asked that the township hire an independent arborist to come out and verify that 119 trees that are there needed to come down because they were hazardous or diseased or dead. And they submitted another arborist report, the applicant did, and the same arborist came out to the site, and he had another arborist with him who he didn't say the name of. And they just confirmed the original arborist report. But it was a little shaky because the criteria they had for hazardous was if any tree, healthy or not, was within falling distance of a house, it was hazardous. So that was justification for taking it down. And that seems a little extreme, and it would set a bad precedent if the township accepted this without any check. It should be at
Alan, I
least.
know the township will be checking that. Obviously, this time of year, it's difficult to check the overall health of all the trees. One of the things that their arborist did was they actually marked the trees out in the field so that now you can actually, walking through, you can tell. I think when you guys had made your visit, it wasn't clear exactly which tree was which that they're talking about, either being dead, diseased, or being a hazard. And now they've marked that with different types of paint so that when springtime comes, we'll be able to send someone out there who's more of a tree expert to ascertain whether or not their arborist is accurate or not.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that point too, with what Jim and Alan were just talking about. I think that's absolutely necessary because at this time of year, even experts have an issue trying to identify whether trees are alive or not. Once leaf out occurs, then it is somewhat more of a certainty. But I think we certainly do need an independent arborist, not two arborists from the same company who go out and the one is patting the other one on the back. And yeah, it's the same exact thing going on. So I think that's a really smart move on the part of the township.
All right.
It-
So public comment?
Actually, Alan, if I can
Okay.
add something really
Yeah.
quick.
Sure.
For Jim, is this gonna be on the next Board of Supervisors agenda as is?
Yes, it is.
All right, I would actually recommend not putting it on the agenda until after we have all this cleared up, because my read of the arborist report makes it look like it's almost laughable, the what they put out there to date. And I would very much like them to get that evaluated before we move forward with any votes on a site plan. That's my opinion, and that's what I'll say if it's on the agenda, and I'll go into much more detail then. But I don't think it's ready for prime time based on what the EAC is telling us.
All right, was there public comment?
Yes, Doug
Yeah,
Marshall.
What happened to our guest?
Who's talking?
I'm sorry, can you see me?
Yes,
You're better off if you can. I'm not particularly handsome, but if you can hear me, that's good enough. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I did have a couple of comments or questions that perhaps can be clarified, although I think that Mr. Greer, if I can read the name, it's tiny, may have clarified it for me, but I couldn't help but notice that the second arborist report of February 10th is not an independent report in that so much as it's a recounting by, it's signed by the very first arborist, the same author, this Herbert Hickmock, and he is essentially recounting to us, by which I mean the audience, and the EAC, what the second ISC certified arborist said. And just for my own purposes, I really would like to see the independent report to the extent that it was in fact written. Although now I realize from what Mr. Bernier said, I mean, if there are two people from the exact same arborist company, then I'm really not comfortable with that, because the EAC requested an independent arborist, by which I thought, Mr. Dresser meant, from like a separate company, which didn't have a dog in the race. So I just wasn't comfortable with that. Frankly, and I don't know if this is his job. I mean, if Alan Dresser went out and did his own observations, I mean, I would accept that flat out. I would just say, okay, that's fine. But that's not really, maybe that's not his job. I'm not trying to say it is. The other thing I couldn't help but notice is that the February 10th report, again, ostensibly, which is a recounting of what the second arborist stated, is now claiming that it is the best way to determine the viability of trees and their health is during the dormant period, whereas in the first report of December 7th, the inspector, the arborist says, well, this isn't really so much a valid report because it was done before I could fully, assess the integrity of the canopy. In other words, he, is admitting that a dormant report is not a good report. So you have what seems to be an inconsistency there. And now, again, I'm not an arborist. I don't know what is or isn't the best way to determine the health of trees. But I'm not comfortable with that until that can be clarified. I also have to say, as I looked here at the second report, it almost seemed to suggest that there are certain species of trees which are inherently, basically subject or it would be permissible to knock them down, so to speak, because they are, and I'm quoting here, subject to several wood rotting fungi. That's in regard to the black locust tree or the black cherry tree, subject to several diseases. Then there's the bacterial leaf scotch, ever increasing threats. I mean, those are all presumptions or assumptions. And in reality, I mean, trees live a long time and they don't ever get sick. I mean, it's sort of like human beings. We're all subject to various illnesses. It doesn't mean that we're not viable, human beings. So that was confusing to me. And again, that might be something that, people here at the EAC who know so much more than I do, can clarify.
Yeah, I noticed that comment. They said the species is known to be a target of a specific disease. I mean, that's any tree. It's pretty wide.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I don't understand with this whole report. So we're basing taking down trees on what could happen in the future. So right now there's only one
exactly.
house, or
Yeah.
just because there's going to be houses in the future doesn't mean these trees are hazardous.
Yeah.
Currently, they're not hazardous because the houses are not there, aside from the one that's currently existing.
Mhm.
If there's no decay, if there's no blight, they're not hazardous. What could potentially happen in the future is unknown right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
there was another paragraph here, the December 7th report, which I just have to throw out there. It says there is very little understory because of the density of the overhead canopy. Trees are community organisms and rely on each other to survive. Trees internal to the site are protected by those on the perimeter of the wooded area. So that suggests to me this is a much more complex issue, and we have to make sure that the entire organism, by which I mean not just one single tree, but it's almost as if, you know, well, you can't just look at one cell of a human body. It's the entire organism that works together. And I wanted to, I just have to throw that out there because, again, I'm not an expert, but it just struck me as very, very revealing, because I didn't see a reference to that in terms of, you know, the red lines, the circles that appear on the map. I also have to say, you know, the very first report and then the second report, they seem to make reference to the different tree species as being the dominant tree species. The second report doesn't even refer to most of the tree species in the first report. And finally, I just have to say that it surprised me a little bit to see this item on the Board of Supervisors agenda for next week, because it was my understanding that, you know, the EEAC is really the foundational body. You know, when you've reached your consensus as to whether this can go forward, then my sense from just attending some of the earlier planning commission meetings, you know, they're going to accept what you say. In fact, there was comments that have been made at those commissions that you know, you, the EAC, you individuals really are very well thought of, and they're just going to basically take your opinion. So I don't understand how I can go to the BOS when the developer hasn't really taken your comments and guidelines into account. And so it just seems premature here. And I'd like to have that independent arborist, and then we can move forward and finally put this thing to bed. Thank you very much.
Okay. It sounds like, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It sounds like from what Jim Majewski said that the township is going to get an arborist out there in the spring and take a look at him. So that's
Yeah,
good.
well, that actually hasn't been voted on by the Board of Supervisors, but I believe that's the recommendation that our township engineer, myself, and obviously Supervisor Grenier would agree with that too, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So just from a process perspective for Mr. Marshall and anyone else, I know a lot of members of the EAC are familiar with this, but typically a developer may ask that their plan is put on the Board of Supervisors agenda if it's finished with the planning commission process, as we go through planning and zoning, et cetera, depending on what they need. And once they get through the planning commission process, then they may ask to be put on the agenda, or they may say, you know what, planning commission may have approved subject to certain conditions, so let us deal with those conditions before we go to the board. That is developer dependent. Not everyone operates that way. It would probably be better if they did. So, and they don't, from their perspective, you know, the EAC and for that matter, the planning commission are both advisory boards. They're not regulatory boards. So they don't have authority to say, you must do this, you must do that. Even though we can and should take under advisement many of their, all of their comments. I'll say that as a former member of the EAC. Doesn't always, and I'll be honest, doesn't always happen. But in this case, there are some very clear issues. I'm guessing I haven't been involved with this talking to the developer or anything on this one, but I'm guessing the developer probably made it a certain distance and said, okay, I want to be on the agenda now. And then we'll have the board, and I encourage everyone to attend that's interested in this. We'll have discussions about various aspects, whether we seek to not vote on it officially whenever it's on the agenda, which it looks like it'll be on the next meeting agenda, or we, the majority of the board may vote to approve upon certain conditions be met. I know what I've seen to date. I know what I would vote or what I would recommend is basically what I've said tonight. But I'm only one of 5, so that's also part of the what the developer takes into account. So that's really just the process and approach that some developers want to work more closely with groups like the EAC and the Planning Commission. Others say they're more checking a box that they have to go through that process, and they'll do whatever they feel like and then see how it ends up in a vote. And then others are somewhere in the middle along that continuum. So that's just a process discussion. Nothing directly to do with this developer or what we're talking about specifically on this project, but that's just a overall process. And Mr. Majewski, if I misspoke on anything, please correct me, but I just want, it's good to have that background.
Yeah, you were pretty accurate there. Although it should be noted that all plans that are submitted to any municipality in Pennsylvania are guided by the municipality's planning code.
Right.
And the rules say that once the plan is submitted, the Board of Supervisors has 90 days after the next regularly scheduled planning commission upon which to act on the plan. I believe the issue with this one is that the next meeting in April, or the time allowed for this to be acted upon by the board, expires prior to the next meeting in the middle of April. And so that's why it's on the Planning Commission. At the meeting, obviously, the board can request that they grant a continuance, or as Mr. Grenier had said, any approval that may be forthcoming from a board can and will be, and is almost always conditioned upon compliance with the engineer's review letter, compliance with certain recommendations from boards and committees. And I think Andy's letter, which will be updated based on the revised plans that were submitted and his discussions. And also, just to let you know, I did speak to Andy, and he's all on the same page with you guys as far as the trees and the need to have it looked at in the spring. But as I was saying, any approval that would possibly be forthcoming would be conditioned upon compliance with whatever that is. So from this committee right now, if you could send us tomorrow just what your updated recommendation is from your prior letter. It could just be one sentence that, you've looked at what they've done and you're still concerned about A, B, and C, because your prior letter will be in the packet. But if you have anything you'd like to add to that, we can certainly put that in the packet.
And Jim, you brought up the next meeting, April 19th. So I'm assuming April 5th, is that a holiday of some type that I just haven't looked at the calendar to see what it is?
I believe that is Passover.
Okay, so that's Easter. Yeah. Okay.
So you said you wanted comments by tomorrow?
I had an additional comment before you move from the topic.
All right, make it quick though. We're running out of time.
I will.
Okay.
So in addition to the things that were discussed, there were 2 questions that I wanted to ask about. And one of them is, what happened to the EAC recommendation about including or placing a conservation easement on a portion of lots 3 and 6 within the protected woodlands area? Is that still on the table? Has that been addressed, and has it been decided that that's no longer going to be required?
Well, we were just advising the supervisors. We thought that would be a good idea. It's up to them whether to.
Yeah. Lisa, that it's not a requirement to put a conservation easement over anything. It's more because the developer was probably, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not getting this right, but it's mostly because developers often look to get some relief, let's say, from our tree replacement ordinance. And that was sort of an idea to address that. Personally, I would say hold them to the full tree ordinance anyway, but Alan, did I miss anything there?
Well, it's the idea that these woodlands, after the houses are built and 10 years, 20 years down the road, you know, things happen in them. They sometimes have sheds built in them or whatever. And having a conservation easement would ensure they remain woodlands and protect them in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, any other comment?
Okay, so one other question, comment, so it's just a buttress. I just want to buttress what was discussed about the types of trees and the sizes of trees. It sounds like that's definitely on the committee's mind and it's going to be addressed again. But I just wanted to point out that, you know, the recommendations from the committee heretofore, as stated, were that there be a mix, including appropriate large shrubs and shade trees. So if you look at the numbers right now, the only shade trees are part of the street trees, the 9 street trees, and all of the shrubs and replacement trees that are on the key on the plan are only between 14 and 16 inches, the ones that have to be a minimum of 3-inch caliber, and then, or the maximum of the wooded shrubs and the foundation shrubs are between 12 and 30 inches. So obviously that's a lot smaller than what is recommended or being considered. So I just wanted to point that out, because it looks like by using the terms understory woodland shrubs and foundation shrubs, which don't seem to be defined specifically in the code, it's the developer who's kind of picking the types and sizes of the different categories. So, you know, I would like to see a little bit more attention to how they're making those decisions and that those not be glossed over. So that's just one request. And quickly, the other thing is just with respect to the trees, the street trees, I saw that there is a proposal that they're going to include the 9 shade trees on Big Oak, and out of the 10 originally that were going to be there, but 0 on Elbow. And you know, it states in the waiver letter that existing vegetation satisfies the requirement. So I really don't understand that. How is that going to be satisfied if the street trees have to be a minimum of 3-inch caliber, and if they have to be installed every 30 feet of the curb line? So that's something I would like to see addressed or explained. You know, I just didn't see anything subsequent to the revised waiver letter request that explains what's going on there. So that was my last comment.
I think there are trees already there along the street, so they count as street trees. There's already existing trees. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim Majewski.
No, that's correct. In order to comply with that section of the ordinance, they would have to cut down trees to plant new trees. So to the extent, though, that the trees are determined not to be healthy and everything, then they would be planting trees to comply with that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like, looking at this diagram, that you can see the existing trees. It doesn't look like there are any slated to be removed in that area right in the front there, right along the road. So, okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we need to move
Well,
along.
Thank you for moving that up in the agenda.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, hope that helped you. All right. Do you want to go back to the original number 2, tree planting? Trees were planted along Mirror Lake Road today. Take a drive by and look at them. And Jim and I and Jim Majewski and Sumya took a tree tour on Sunday And what do we have? 4 spots, Jim, from the 2016 planting, long-range tree planting plan to plant trees, and then a couple new ones. We'll
Yeah,
come up with.
so Dan Bankowski from Farmland Preservation attended as well.
That's right.
Huh. Did he offer, not to get into details, but did he offer any alternative locations related to farmland preservation that maybe we hadn't seen before?
I don't think he offered any alternatives, but he had some issues with our proposal that bordered on Woodside Road for the preserved farm, where Dolington runs into Woodside off to the left there.
Yep.
We're actually preparing a proposal that, well, a formal type proposal based upon the site visit of last Sunday. And some of those will be bearing on farmland preservation land, but we're also thinking of possible trade-offs that would make a lot of sense. But when we were in the Mirror Lake area, Dan noted no objections to the Mirror Lake road planting, because for the most part, I mean, that's almost, I know it's part of the farm, but it's never really been considered part of the farm. And I think the planting that's taken place there now in the long run is really going to serve the township and the citizens very well.
Yeah, should we even consider planting behind that row of trees at this point? Since that might.
I think we should, because
Okay.
the stream runs through there, and any planting is going to result in cleaner water, quite frankly, because it's going to prevent sediment
Yeah.
going into the stream.
But I'm just thinking the ad hoc
Put it in our
property.
proposal.
The ad hoc
Put it
property
in our
committee.
proposal, Alan, and then just,
Yeah, okay.
and see what happens, I think.
Yeah.
And I think there's also, room for some trees on the pond, but, we can put out a proposal with the rationale behind it and then start to discuss it.
Yeah, one of the places, Dan, was Memorial Park. We went there and you were concerned about the east side. We got some.
Okay, I just think it's just wide open. I think there's a good
Yeah.
opportunity
that's one of
there
the
for
places
something. Yeah.
I would recommend. And the golf course.
Yeah.
And then finish up Keola Field and Fred Allen Fields.
Yeah.
Those are
And relative to anything at Patterson Farm, the parcel,
Mhm.
don't be Jim, to your point, I think, don't be shy about making proposals for more tree plantings there outside of agricultural activities where it'll enhance water quality for the farm and other stuff. That's part of the overall consideration of how to manage the farm in the future. So and there's nobody that sits on the committee that has an environmental background, even though that's how we chartered it. There's no one on the committee with an environmental background, like that's actually a voting member of the committee. So it's important that they have that type of information from you all. I know, Kevin, I think you're an invited attendee, so I appreciate that. But unfortunately, you don't get to vote. So we want to make sure that that type of stuff, whether it's tree plantings or something else, that could be considered, even if it's more sustainable farming practices. But I think the current farmer does a pretty good job of that. The lead in soils is a big issue that they're not truly bringing to the fore at the moment. So anything that you see along those lines, I know this group isn't shy, but I'll just say it that way. Don't be shy about bringing it up so that they do look at it.
No, we've never been timid about that. In the last couple of years, we've had some really large plantings on the farm per se, not on the fields, but along the streams that run through.
Yeah.
And I think that's been very helpful as far as, less sedimentation going into that water. So,
Exactly.
and we've never been too timid about that stuff. So we're gonna have a proposal written up.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Couple weeks, yeah. All right, let's move on to recycling. What do we got? 15 minutes left. Recycling, we got our April 22nd Earth Day collection event. Been putting out flyers here around town, the usual flyer. And I'll have Sumya put the flyer on Facebook and get Monica to put it on the Park and Rec Facebook page and get the word out. So that's moving along. And then any comments? Everybody good with April 22nd? We need to send out a newsletter, and Paul's not here. So I guess I'll try to email him about it. All right, recycling in LMT schools. Anything new on that?
I don't think so.
There's
No.
actually a meeting. When is it? Hold on. March 22nd, there's a sustainability meeting.
All right. Okay, and then the final recycling item is the 2023 Lower Makefield Township Recycling Guide. And we should probably have a vote to approve it, send it out.
So I have a revision.
Oh, I made all the copies. What's a revision?
So page 13 under yard waste has the 2023 dates.
Yeah,
Why don't you just get rid of that and put the link to the township so that, because it's going to change every year.
well, that'll be covered in the 2024 recycling guide.
Okay. Why don't you just do okay.
Yeah, that would be a good long range plan, but
I mean, why are we putting it, why don't we just call it recycling guide? Why are we putting a date on it?
well, it's current because stores change. Sometimes they'll take recycling, batteries one time, 1 year, and then you'll go back there next year and they're not taking them anymore. Just to keep it current. It won't be that hard to bring up to date in a year from now. I mean, you just go to the places or call them and ask, they're still doing it. But it's done. I was gonna put, if we vote to approve it, put maybe 7, 8 copies of the township building and 7, 8 at the community center. And then we could hand them out at the recycling event on April 22nd. Anybody who stops by to drop off styrofoam will be interested in recycling. So they.
Are you gonna I'm assuming you are, but you're gonna plan to post it as a PDF on the website?
Yeah, you think we could put it on the EAC? Is there any way we could get it on the LMT website?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
The board could discuss it. It doesn't seem like anything objectionable to me, but we'll have to talk to the board and the manager, get that on there. And at the same time, wherever we end up putting it, I know Jim is a social media guru, Jim Majewski. We can put it up on our social media as well, just so it gets distribution that way. So,
Right.
But to Linda's point, if we're going to do that and it's going to be in the PDF, it would be helpful if there are, I can't remember if
There are hyperlinks.
Thank you. So there we go. So as
Yeah.
long as we get some good links to use that people can click on in the PDF, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We do have hyperlinks in there. So I guess, Linda, we could, next year, we'll just put the link to the township. That way we get covered.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of work went into this recycling guide, and I think if we can distribute as widely as possible, it's really going to be in everybody in the township interest. There's some really, really good information in that, so we would certainly appreciate any help in distributing as large an audience as possible.
right.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna send you a copy, Dan, and I'll put these in the township building tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Does
start-
Mr.
yeah.
Majewski have a copy?
Do you want
Wait.
one, Jim? I could even sign it, and give it to you.
Ellen, why don't you send one why don't you copy Mr. Majewski, myself, and
Okay.
our new, David Kratz, our township man, and Monica while you're at it, because she distributes a lot of that stuff too.
Okay. Everybody will get one.
Yeah.
Okay. Dave. All right. I guess that's all for recycling. Proposed LMT ordinance revisions. Jim Majewski's here, and that's good. Anything new on that?
Yes, we actually went to the planning commission, discussed the ordinance. They had some concerns about like what are all the alternatives that are out there for different properties. I've actually, and I'm not quite done yet, but I've gone ahead and looked at a bunch of different properties to do site capacity calculations to see what is the impact on what we have proposed, versus what is currently permitted on a property. And I could send this all to you too, but basically for the R1, there's really no change in what people get out of this at the end of the day. There's really, and I'll show you just an example of 3 properties that I had taken a look at. I just have to share my screen 1 second.
Jim, as you're doing that, I believe it looks like this one might also be on our next agenda as well for the Board of Supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes. So I know the EAC has already kind of weighed in on this a little bit. I know there's a couple little changes. We found one typo on the R2. I think we have a factor of 1.5 plus a sliding scale, but it should have been 2 instead of 1.5. But here I just have a little bit of a chart showing 3 different properties. One's a little over 100 acres, another one's 88 acres, another one's 26. And it shows how many lots should be allowed with recreation land and with the fee in lieu of recreation land. And these are the theoretical densities. Obviously, at that type of build out, you often have trouble trying to get the exact number of lots because if you have a 1 acre lot and you have a 106 acre property, it's not going to be feasible to get 105 lots out of that with 1 acre lots, because at the end of the day, you need room for roads, you need room for detention basins. It's usually about a 10% loss of land, if not more. So that theoretical property that's 106 acres that you can get 100 lots out of with a 25% open space requirement, that number drops down to 94. But in reality, since we reduced the lot size, you basically, the developer nets out the same amount of lots versus the current ordinance or the proposed. And that goes pretty much throughout. When you get up to the higher numbers, they get a little bit of a slight density bonus there, but it's not really substantial. Same goes for another theoretical 88 acre property. That one, we lotted out 65 lots out of that. Once again, like I said, you lose 15% of your lots, your area for lots based on just the size and the roads and the detention basins. But at the end of the day, that theoretical number doesn't go up that drastically from having 0 open space to having 25, 30, 35% open space. For the R2, that's where I found the slight discrepancy in the prior ordinance, that we had a factor of 1.5 plus the sliding scale. And this one actually works out for a theoretical 26 acre property, almost identical across the board. So basically, from the current zoning to the proposed zoning, everything's going to be at the end of the day roughly about 10%, within 10% of each other.
So Jim, a few quick questions. If they're able to get more lots, granted they could be smaller, but if they're able to get more lots, did you check what impact does that have on the potential gross impervious area across the board? Do they have the potential to have more impervious area now because they can develop more lots in this scenario?
At the end of the day, actually, it will probably end up being less, but I could check that out too, because that's
I'm curious, yeah.
a good question. I'm curious now too.
Yeah.
But I think the theoretical number will still be pretty much about the same. It'll be within 10%, either plus or minus.
Okay. And the planning commission also had back when I was the liaison, you know, when this first came up, they had a big discussion about how are we defining open space, and I don't know where that ended up, and that's something that I think this group would be very interested in hearing what it's currently looking like in the ordinance.
Yeah, and I didn't have a chance to circulate that around to the EAC, but basically we just reconciled that because, as you recall, we have a whole bunch of different open space definitions, and they're not quite all consistent. And
right.
Our job as part of this amendment that'll be coming back in front of the Planning Commission and the board, and then circulating back around through everyone again too, will reconcile all of that.
Okay. It is I don't know what the EAC thinks. Maybe we don't need to get into it in too much detail tonight, but I'm not in favor of active recreation space being included in the definition of open space. You know, highly managed ball fields, often when you run numbers there, they're so packed that they're not providing the same type of ecological benefit, and sometimes they have negative stormwater impacts just based on the way they're worked. So I would not want ball fields and similar land uses included in the definition of open space. Separate definition, separate land use type that we could include in something, but I wouldn't include it specifically under open space.
So Jim, you're going to send this out to people when it's ready, or is it?
Yes.
We're going to see it soon. Okay. You're going to wait till the supervisors see it first?
No.
No. Okay.
And it's going to be re-advertised, but it's not going to go into and I don't know why we need to re-advertise it now, but it looks like it's on the agenda, excuse me, to be re-advertised, not accepted as is, just so folks are aware what I think we're doing.
Exactly.
All right. And the landscaping invasive species ordinance should we include that on the agenda anymore? Is that?
Well, that's something that I'm now, starting next week, I'm over the big hump of getting our new software up and running. And just for anyone who's listening, for the public, we do have a new public portal that people can submit citizen requests, complaints, observations, ask questions, submit permits of all kinds through our website. There's a link on there, and on every page on the side that you can go and do all that stuff. So I was pretty busy the last couple of months making sure that was all up and running. And so I'm available to meet with Linda anytime in the next month.
I'll check my schedule.
Thank you.
And get back to you.
All right. So moving on, land use plans, we did 1101 Big Oak, 1566 subdivision. That's a roughly 21 acre lot. I believe that's going to go before the Planning Commission, their next meeting.
That is correct.
Final plan. And
Correct.
the only real issue there is how they're going to meet the tree replacement ordinance, or one of the main issues.
Right.
Right. Okay. So we'll watch what happens. All right, number 6, environmental lecture series. Jim, did you talk to Mike?
I have some information on that. Wheelbacker gave a lecture at Bowman's as part of the winter lecture series on monarch butterflies. And it was really a first-class, superb lecture. And in the past, I've actually used Bowman's as a proving ground. And when there's something exceptional that happens there, I like to move it over to the township as well. So I talked to Mike, and he actually lectures on 5 different topics, but I think the monarchs is probably the one that people would, most be interested in, because these butterflies are pretty iconic anymore. And he's available. His fee is $200, which I think is, actually pretty low for a quality lecture like that. And I was thinking that maybe June or September. What's the council's opinion on that? My personal feeling would be in September, maybe in the middle of the month. And if we think that's a good time, I could, talk to Mike and see if that works with his schedule. But what's the feeling of the group?
September's fine with me.
Fine.
Yeah. I
All
guess.
right, well, look, I'll talk to Mike in the next week or two. And, we have plenty of time, so certainly I'll have some dates firmed up before our next meeting in April. And so I'm excited about this. This is a really, really first-class quality lecture, and I think we would draw a lot of people.
Yeah, you should check with Monica Turney to make sure the community center is available.
Well, my personal opinion is not to hold it at the community center. I would
Really?
prefer to hold it at the administration building because I think the PowerPoint shows up much better.
Okay.
Problem with the community center is those clerestory windows, they really let in way, way too much light. And we've had trouble there before with the clarity of the images on the screen because of that light. And there's really no way of cutting it off. Plus, the admin building can hold 80 or 100, people with, no real issues. So that's my personal opinion. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
I'm agnostic. I mean, either way. Yeah, if they'll let you do it. Yeah, you should find out.
Yeah, and I talked to Dave Kelleher, and he's the one who, sets this all up, and he's done it in the admin building for us several times before. I don't think there'll be any issue there at all.
So
let me.
Jim, please reach out to our township manager, because we do incur a fee for using, it does cost us money to actually get folks to run the equipment and all that. So we just need to coordinate through him as well.
Yeah, we've in the past, Dan, we've used our budget to take care of that.
Which is awesome. But he can help you to get that wrapped up and organized too.
Who's this, Ken?
No, Dave Kratzer,
Dave. Okay.
the new township manager.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so I'll run this through Dave, of course.
Yeah. Have you met him yet?
Yeah, I've met him.
Okay.
Alan and I met him, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. And then we also met him again at the ceremony for the Environmental Stewardship Award.
That's right.
We were quite impressed with our new township manager.
Okay. Fair enough. I just want to make sure that you're familiar with him so you can continue to coordinate. That's all.
All right. Next topic is the LMT sustainability certification. I don't know of anything new on that. I was hoping Sumia would be on the call. She was interested in that.
So basically, I did thank you to Sumia and for forwarding that spreadsheet. I did send that along to our township manager. He was very thankful because it helps a bit in his work and staff's work.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving forward. They have nothing to report from the township side of things that I'm aware of. But Jim, when you speak to him about the lecture series, you may be a good opportunity to inquire about status and if they need anything, if he could use any help.
Sure.
All right. And number 8, odds and ends. Let's see, Matt's not here, so we can't get a report on the Makefield Park Steering Committee. I don't know if there's anything new with that. Kevin, you got any updates other than trees?
The ad hoc, the master planning company is in the process of being hired. They were selected. I might get an update after this meeting tonight. So hopefully that's on process and I'll get moving.
Okay.
Kevin, can you keep an ear out for what the status is? I believe we voted to allow the township manager to direct the township manager to prepare an RFP to clean up the contaminated soils, the lead contaminated soils at the property.
I will check on that.
Yeah, I'm curious. I personally wanted that to get done before they moved ahead with a master plan, so we could clean it up and have a clean slate. But I was not successful in that, so I just want to make sure that continues, so it's not left behind.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And they're not going to look at like perimeter development around Patterson Farm. Is there any concern with that? Because Dave Miller, I think he sold his house right on the corner of, what is it,
Over by the point there. Yeah.
And I'm wondering what's going to happen. That's a nice piece of property.
I think he moved his lot line. He's been in front of the board and the planning commission in the past.
Yeah, they subdivided off
Yeah.
some of the property, but I think he sold his house. I don't think he lives there anymore.
I don't. Mr. Majewski would know if we asked him.
But yeah,
I don't remember.
I saw like 10 cars in the driveway today, so I got worried. So they might want to keep an eye on that or have some suggestions on that.
Alan, I got one more for you, whenever you get a chance. So
yeah, we're open discussion.
Sure. So someone may want to attend this. April 3rd, the Newtown Board of Supervisors looks like it's moving forward the single-use plastics ordinance. Their EAC is holding a special public meeting April 3rd at 7 p.m. to introduce a sample ordinance. I know there's been some interest with this group in terms of possibly doing something similar, so it might be an opportunity to see what our neighbors are doing on a related topic if anyone has an interest.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm just seeing that on patch.com. I'm not sure. I don't know much else. So if you Google it and see it, you could Newtown single-use plastics, you can get more info.
Okay. Single use. Yeah, I bet Gene, you'd love to go to that.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. We may delegate you as our representative. So, just so I make sure I heard this right, Jim Majewski said comments on 1101 Big Oak are due tomorrow. Did he say? He said
That's what he said, Alan, but
Okay.
the comments that we already made are incorporated. I think what Jim was saying is that if you wanted to add a couple of more sentences
Yeah.
to clarify or amplify
Okay.
comments, since maybe with the arborist or anything like that, he said that would be fine. But our original comments are part of what they're looking at.
Okay. Well, I may send a small little paragraph incorporating what I said in that email that I sent out on the new arborist report.
Yeah, it'll be good to have comments on the newest stuff if you can get those done.
Yeah.
So they can be referenced.
Yeah. Can you look at that at all, Linda, if I send you the arborist report? And I can't see red, so I don't know where those trees are. So
Everywhere, Alan. They're everywhere.
Yeah, I see them on my copy.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Does it
But
look
yeah,
good?
Send it over to me tonight, and then I'll add in whatever.
Yeah. Okay, I'll send you the arborist report and then a little
And then fill
paragraph,
that in.
just a brief little thing, you
Mm.
know, complaining. All right. What time is it? 7:09. Anything else? Come on, Gene, you must have something. Nothing?
Well, where are we at? Odds and ends or open discussion?
Yeah, we're beyond open discussion. We're in.
We already took care of the odds and ends, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Matt wasn't here, so two of them were his.
Yeah, okay.
Or three of them were his, actually.
Well, I don't have anything more, so maybe we should just all say goodnight.
Yeah, we'll get our tree recommendations out in the next couple weeks, and I guess that's it.
Yeah, so since we are talking about some stuff that this group's interested in at the next Board of Supervisors meeting, if you want to attend, please feel free. It's always good to have your comments.
All right. We will watch. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Excuse me.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, see everybody later.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Yeah. Have a good month.